What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Hello, Avaya family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Whitney Kobrin, is with us today to talk about why looking for love online will always fail. Whitney is a dating and relationship expert and coach who helps single, divorced, and widowed women to date confidently and build healthy relationships in the modern world. Combining her background in psychology and matchmaking with her own past experience, Whitney offers a uniquely skilled and empathetic approach to healing codependency and cultivating self-love. Welcome to Avaya, Whitney.
Thank you so much, Andy. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. Why don't you get us started with a little background on you? What brought you to the work that you do today?
Sure. So I don't think anyone really sets out to be a love coach and a dating and relationship expert. So it has been a long and winding road to get here. I studied psychology and have a degree in psychology. I planned on becoming a counseling therapist, but life sort of changed my career trajectory, and I went into recruiting and corporate HR, talent acquisition, did that for 13 years, gained a lot of life experience. I have a son who's almost 17. I struggled in relationships a lot for 15 plus years. I couldn't quite crack the code. I fell into many different bad patterns of settling for guys that I knew I wasn't really that into, chasing after guys that I knew weren't really all that into me and giving me crumbs. And finally, when I was about 30, I came across this coach online and I just started learning so much, and it totally shifted my energy. And then I was able to meet my husband, and we talked about this a little before, that my husband sadly passed away in 2017, and it really changed my whole life. And that's when I left my corporate career and became a matchmaker, and then that led me to being a coach in this space. I also have moved on to create a new relationship, and so I know what it's like to have to start over, to go through something like losing a partner, a divorce. Mine was not a divorce, but I've talked to so many people. I know that there's a lot of similarities. And I finally am in the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. And I've helped hundreds of women to love themselves, love their lives, and find lasting love.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you sharing your story and how you got to where you are today. And okay, so we're going to be talking about online dating. And so in your experience, does it work?
Such a great question. And I've titled this Looking for Love Online Will Always Fail, but online dating can work. So, online dating is not really dating. I just want to clarify that. Online dating is just a way to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise meet, that you can potentially date. 1 in 3 marriages today starts from an online introduction. So it is working for a lot of people. There's just so many factors around mindset, resiliency, communication, boundaries. All of these things really are necessary to make online dating productive and allow it to work. Also, a lot of people have just too small of a sample size. They go out and they meet 5 people and say, oh, it's awful, it's terrible. And the way that I look at online dating is it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, and you can't get distracted by all the hay. You have to keep moving and keep going on. So yes, it really can work. Do you have to use online dating if you're single? No. There's a lot of ways that you can meet people. I just was on a conversation today with someone that said, I work from home, all my friends are partnered, and I don't go out and meet people. And we started brainstorming about who her ideal partner is and where do they hang out and where do they go. Is he at a professional conference? Is he at, um, cigar bars? Like, where do these guys hang out? And this is a problem for a lot of women, that they just go to their jazzercise class and their women's Bible study, and they're doing all these events with women. That's great and fun, and I love it. And I love, women coming together and supporting each other. But it's no wonder that they're not meeting um, men along the way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining a little bit more about the title of today's talk. And yes, I totally understand how like the actual just the online part isn't actually dating because you're not dating yet. But so okay, like obviously if 1 in 3 people who get married meet online, then there's still people that meet offline and organically. Can you share a little bit, like some tips for how someone could meet someone organically in their day-to-day life?
Yeah. So number one, it has to start with your energy, right? Because if you're if you're out and about running your errands or going to a conference, an event, and you are like looking down and not feeling like you look good, and you're on your phone and you don't want to talk to anybody, then you're not going to meet anybody out. So number one, it has to start with having a certain type of energy that is open to meeting people and chatting and talking to people. It requires you to feel confident. And I know that a lot of the listeners today are probably struggling with people pleasing and codependency and not feeling good enough and not feeling that confidence. And that can be really dangerous, because if somebody sees you as someone that is weak and manipulative, able to be manipulated, then a lot of times the givers of the world are taken advantage by the takers of the world. And so to go out there and try to meet people, you want to have a clear intention of what you want, what kind of relationship you want. And then from there, you can create healthier relationships. So meeting people in person, number one, is just on your regular errands, doing your regular life, just being open to that. The other thing is, if you don't come across a lot of people, then find out where guys that you might date hang out. So it doesn't always have to be bars and restaurants. I mean, that's kind of the obvious go to, but professional conferences, go to Meetup. I have been to many Bitcoin and crypto conferences, and they are about 95% male. So many of those are definitely single. So there's just a lot of ways that you can meet people. You can tell your friends and family that you're open to being set up. You can hire a matchmaker. There's just so many different ways.
Yeah, and I like that a bit ago you just talked about how sometimes if your women in particular are looking for, let's say, a man and they're going to only, their women's groups and their women's gets-togethers or whatever, then yes, obviously, right. And sometimes that stuff isn't even obvious. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like I'm not actually being in places where I could actually meet someone. So yeah, just getting aware of that. And since we're also talking about the theme of self-love today, how does someone know if self-love is a problem for them?
Well, unfortunately, our whole society really creates so much pressure, encouraging us to be judgmental and critical of ourselves, and always pushing and always, never having enough, never achieving enough. And this really gets at the core of us. And so there are some people that really know that they're struggling with self love and they feel like they hate themselves. And that's really obvious. But what I have found is the majority of people, it's not that obvious. They think that they love themselves, they think that they like and respect themselves. But when it really comes down to it, as soon as they make a mistake or get rejected or go through a hard time, they're really hard on themselves, and they're not only judging and criticizing, but they are being downright mean. I went through this. It's not a coincidence that I'm here today, because I'm the person that struggled with codependency and lacking self-love and allowing people to take advantage and walk over me. And I've changed all of that, thank goodness. But I realized several years ago, working with a therapist, that when I was in a really hard time or place, I was actually saying, I hate you to myself. And if you would have asked me on a regular day, do you love yourself? I would have said, absolutely, yes, hands down. But at the same time, when things were hard, I was saying, I hate you. And you have a relationship with yourself, just like you could have a relationship with any other person. If your partner says, I love you all the time, but as soon as you have a fight, they're calling you names and saying, I hate you and wanting to hit you, I mean, we know that that's not healthy. And yet a lot of people are doing that to themselves. It's become so normal. And our own self love is minimal and conditional. And this affects our self worth. When it comes to dating and going out, we're looking for someone to make us feel enough. We're looking for love to fill this void inside of us. We're looking for somebody to validate us and tell us that we're worthy. And the biggest problem with that is if you're not a match with someone, if they just aren't that into you, they move on. There's so many different reasons that it might not work out. You begin to judge yourself and say, I'm not good enough. I'm not this, I'm not that, and feeling really bad because of that rejection when really it doesn't have to mean that. So I just love this topic of starting with having a great relationship with yourself even before you go out there dating, because you shouldn't be looking for love. You should be overflowing with love and looking for somebody to share it with.
Ooh, that was a good line right there. That's so beautiful. Absolutely. Because yeah, that's so what we generally tell ourselves is I'm looking for love. But yes, you have so much love within you that you're overflowing and you get to share it with somebody. Ooh, I love that. That's so great. What a like simple, obvious way of looking at it, but yet so drastically different than our like mainstream dating world talks about.
And it is so much more attractive and magnetic to be out there all full of this self love and joy and feeling good about yourself. People want to be around that. They want to taste it, they want to feel it. If you are going out into the world feeling down on yourself and depressed, and, you know, who's going to want to be around that? And it's not nobody. There are people that want to be around that, and they're probably not going to be the healthiest people that you want to be around.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so okay, we're talking self-love. I also want to talk codependency, which goes right into this. So what does codependency tend to look like in early dating stages?
Ooh, that's a great question, because a lot of us, if we have begun our journey of discovering codependence and learning about ourselves in relationships, it's often the years in, deeply ingrained, no boundaries in those relationships, and it becomes really obvious. But you could see the signs also if you're single and dating and meeting people. Number one is codependency is really a lack of boundaries. And so if you are trying to do a lot for other people, if you're trying to fix them, if you're trying to be their therapist, if you're trying to make them feel any certain way, then that's a sign of codependency. You need to come back in and, put your own house in order first, to quote Jordan Peterson. Um, Codependency could also be allowing people to control you. So this is interesting, and if I can take a little time to explain this. One of the things that I have found to be so important in relationships is understanding masculine and feminine energies and polarity. And this is not about gender roles. This exists in all relationships, queer, same sex, heterosexual, doesn't matter. There's usually one person that's more on the masculine side, the yang or yang energy, the pusher, the one that is planning and providing structure and goal oriented and on a mission. And then there's another partner that's more in the feminine role. And this is what creates magnetism. Just like two opposite poles of magnets attract each other. Um, but there is healthy masculine energy and toxic masculine energy. And there is healthy feminine energy and toxic feminine energy. Healthy masculine energy is protective. So if it's cold outside and a guy takes his jacket off and puts it on you, that's a really sweet gesture. That's being protective and masculine. But if he takes your phone and starts deleting every guy's phone number in your phone, then that's toxic. Anytime that they're using their masculine energy to take advantage, to manipulate you, to control you, then you know that it's too far. And that is a big sign of codependency. When somebody starts trying to run your life, control your life, we need to set boundaries and back that off. And while I'm on the topic, I'll explain healthy feminine energy is magnetic and attractive and emotional. But toxic feminine energy, again, toxic is anything where you're trying to lie, steal, manipulate, control other people. So, for example, if a girl is on OnlyFans, right? No judgment on that, but technically speaking, that is a toxic feminine way of being because you're using your amazing feminine energy to just get what you want, and it's not really authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Sorry. I thought you were saying more about that. Yeah, I appreciate you going through both of those different energies. And again, no matter what, it doesn't matter who you're into or not into, but absolutely there are those different polarities and dynamics that influence just naturally our attraction to one another. And I'm glad you went through what's healthy and what is not healthy as it relates to that. What about people pleasing? Because that's a very common trait of someone who struggles with codependency and also a common trait of someone who lacks in self-love. How can people who are people pleasing change their ways?
Yeah. You're so right that it is intricately linked with self love and self acceptance because having boundaries is really a reflection of your own self worth and valuing your own needs and feelings and desires. People pleasing is putting other people's needs and feelings and desires before your own. So, for example, if somebody it wants you to come with them to a concert and you don't really like that music or that group, that band, that DJ, whatever it is, uh, what goes on in your mind, right? If you tend to have people pleasing habits, you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to disappoint them. They went through all this effort. They really want me to be there. They. And breaking through the habit of people pleasing requires you first to become really aware of your own self, checking in with yourself before you say yes or say no or make decisions, and deciding within yourself, first of all, do I want to do this? Do I have the energy for this? Do I have the desire? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the time? All of these are questions that we can ask ourselves. And then the next step just is knowing that you can say no to anyone, anytime, without feeling bad. And of course, easier said than done. This often does take a bit of time, weeks, months of self exploration and building skills to be able to change that habit for good. But it's so possible. It really is.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that very simple one of you don't have to say yes. You can say no because I think there are a lot of people that don't really ever question it. Oh, I have to say yes. I've got to do this for this person. I always have, so I can't say no. That's not allowed or whatever, but it absolutely is. And I'm glad that you bring that up in just the simplest terms for people to start questioning that. What
Yeah, and you're
about
right when you say they always have. Most of the people pleasing people, it started in childhood. It started with parents that they were trying to please, that they had to please, that they were afraid not to please, whatever the situation. It's usually something that has been built over decades. And so
Yeah.
that's why it takes a little bit of time to change and break through that.
Exactly. And of course, when we're kids, there was a lot less room to say no, perhaps if you were really raised by people that your safety was, your survival or safety was at risk, then of course, that's a whole different pattern. But yes, as an adult now, can you say no? And yeah, important to look at. And so what about boundaries? Do you have any tips for communicating boundaries for people who struggle with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, one of the easiest ways to state boundaries is to simply say, I'm feeling this way and I need this thing. Very simple. And then another part of having boundaries is that you need to have a consequence if they don't respect your boundary. So imagine if you're dating somebody and they're trying to get physical before you're ready, and you say no because you could say no anytime to anyone without feeling bad. And they try to push it. Um, you want to have a consequence. And most people have kind of black and white thinking around this, and that's another thing that I help people with in my coaching. So you think, well, I'll either be with them or I won't be with them. And so most people, when we think of a consequence, it's like they think that they have to break up or leave the person, and that's not always true. There's a lot of gray area and different consequences that you could have, right? So in that scenario, if you keep trying to do what you're doing, I've already told you I'm not ready, and if you keep doing it, I'm going to have to leave. Or if you keep doing this, I'm not going to want to see you for a while. Or if you keep doing this, I might break down and cry because this is triggering me right now. Like, give them a real consequence. And the reason we need consequences is because if you keep telling somebody your boundaries and they keep crossing it, then that just becomes nagging. That's what nagging is. Nagging is, I told you to wash the thing. I told you to do that. I told you to do that. Why didn't you do the thing? And it's like, well, you never had a consequence. And so they never felt like they had to do it. And this is so common and can vary widely between, just kind of annoying to being super abusive and unhealthy. It can range in all kinds of ways there. But at the root of boundaries really is having self love, and practicing self compassion is my favorite part of self love. It means that you are kind and understanding with yourself, that you feel loved and accepted and good enough just the way you are. And when we feel that way, it's much easier to set boundaries and enforce them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your examples and the example of nagging, and yeah, totally get that. In the world of, I mean, even with your kids, right? You mentioned you have a son. Obviously, it's like, okay, say, okay, I need you to take out the trash today by 5 p.m. Period, as opposed to I need to take out you to take out the trash today by 5 p.m. or else you're not going to have screen time or something like the right, some kind of specific consequence if I guess one was not listening to you and doing what you asked.
Exactly. And we want to be careful of the consequences with kids. I always like cringe when I hear people in public say, you better get over here now or I'm leaving you. And it's like, this is so toxic and unhealthy because that kid is like, their safety is in jeopardy. If you leave them, they could be kidnapped or die. And so, again, with the all or nothing consequences, there is so many different like gray area consequences that you could come up with.
hmm Yeah, and then going totally with kids, obviously, you don't want to be abandoning your child in a parking lot, and triggering fears of abandonment and all that kind of stuff.
Or giving empty threats. Like that's another thing a lot of people do. If you do that, I'm gonna whip you, and then you're not really gonna whip them. Like we need to have consequences that we'll actually follow through with any relationship.
Yeah, and absolutely for people watching who are dating or want to start dating and things like that, then yes, you make some kind of request without the consequence and it doesn't turn, they don't actually honor it, then yeah, I would say absolutely be very specific about that. That makes perfect sense. So thank you for going into that. And let's talk about how people can go deeper with you. I know you have a great free guide you're giving away as well as a coaching program, and we've got buttons for both of those below.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a program called Dating Done Right, where I help women to first know and love themselves, and then work through the blocks and get rid of the fears, reframe the beliefs, the old patterns, really making way for something new. And then the third step is to build the new skills, learning how to communicate, how to set boundaries, how to navigate this modern world of dating with the apps and the texting and what does he mean by this and should I wait to text back. And so it's deep healing work, but it's also practical skills. And like you said, the links will be in there to check out my program or just to download my free guide, which is how to get more in real life dates from dating apps.
I like that. Awesome. Yes, IRL, in real life. Wonderful. Thank you so much for both of those, Whitney. And again, there's a button below for that free guide, as well as that coaching program that Whitney mentioned. Any last insight you would like to leave us with?
Just that love is still worth it. I just meet so many people that have given up, that think that it's not possible anymore, and it 100% is possible. Even if you don't feel ready yet, I would invite you to connect with me, follow me, schedule a call with me, because that's my favorite thing to do, is to help the people that are stuck, that are not dating, that are frustrated with it. There's still hope for everyone, that love is available to them.
Yes, wonderful reminder. And thank you so much for doing this with us today, Whitney.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing. I'm so happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Well, we're glad you're a part of it. And also thank you to the Avaya students who are watching or listening right now for showing up for yourself on your own journey today. And we will see you all again soon. Take care.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.